Come on, Skype. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Good. There we are. All right. Good morning and welcome to the latest edition of the Red Pilled Fiction Factory from Yucatan. This week I'm back in the Inquisitor's chair, which is a lot more comfortable, I must say, and I'll be asking the questions of a US author. All I know about him is he's from the Deep South, and his name is Joe Kelly, and he's written a book called Tales from the Deplatformed Conservative Fiction Volume 1. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Pretty good. Just up here enjoying my nice, cool AC on a very warm and humid Alabama summer day.
Yeah, I think we share the same sort of weather at this time of year, and I don't even have the benefit of AC, so you can sympathize with me all you like. Now, you have written a very, well, let's start with more about you. Let's start with your background. Can you give us a rough idea of where you're from, what took you, what adventures you've had on the way to being who you are today?
Shoot. Well, I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana. I grew up mostly in Virginia, but I'm going to go ahead and give Arkansas co-credit since we moved there when I was in the middle of high school. And let's see, basically drifted from there to Alabama, went off to school in Texas, came back here. I just kind of drifted across the Deep South. Had a lot of interesting experiences, but that's neither here nor there, really.
Are you an army brat? Because you seem to have moved every month by the sound of it.
Everyone says that. Everyone asks that. No, my dad was in the insurance industry, and his company just seemed to constantly move him around. But that's the business, I guess.
Fair enough. Now, your book it's short stories. I ought to qualify before we get started. It's 4 short stories, 3 of which are perfectly scripted for this channel and its material. The 4th one's slightly different. And they're not that long, so it's more of a novella in size, the total work. You write a small introduction to the stories, which I'm going to quote from a part of it, because I think what you've done is something very interesting. You have, in your daily life, I'm sure, and you can extrapolate on this, have come across all the insanities that we all face everywhere we look, in every direction, every day of our lives,
ain't it the truth?
Minute.
Oh, I hate it.
Instead of lying down like 99% or 90% of the people, and instead of just gritting your teeth, you've very bravely, I think, come out with all guns blazing, and which makes for an excellent read and a very satisfying one if you're someone who's sat there, suffered as much as I have and you and others have in our daily life. Now, the introduction says, the 2010s were crazy. They started with the first black president and ended with the president being some sort of real estate mogul. I remember seeing on TV all the time when I was a kid in the 80s and 90s. The 2010s also saw the rise of the social justice warrior, who was like the 90s politically correct college student on methamphetamine. I think this is a very good point, by the way, you're addressing here. For decades, we had seen the religious right as being the moral authoritarians, burning books and slapping warning labels of heavy metal and hip-hop albums. Then the 2010s came along, and it was your liberal aunt, who was sending angry tweets to NBC trying to get some show cancelled because the star made an offensive joke about transvestites 5 years ago. Big tech, the corporations had essentially replaced print media, also began censoring everyone, including the President of the United States, for offending any group that enjoys the shelter of perceived oppression, which in their eyes, in the eyes of the social justice warrior, the cringe fringe, as you call them, is anyone who is not white, heterosexual, or Protestant. The screaming blue-haired feminist, the angry black nationalist, and the upper middle-class Antifa kids bitching about capitalism on Facebook while using their brand new iPhone, all while sipping Starbucks Frappuccino in their rich white suburb. The 2010s had had a lot of things to make fun of and be angry about. How could a decade like this not produce a plethora of entertaining political fiction? As I type this, we're in the early 2020s, which are shaping up to be an equally crazy decade. So there you are. You set the scene, and some great examples. But it's that last penultimate line. How could a decade like that not produce a plethora of entertaining political fiction? And of course, it didn't. It did it. I mean, it's been all of this has gone almost uncommented on, certainly in literature. You can argue the mainstream
I know.
media.
You're absolutely right. I'm actually amazed at just how few authors are going after what I would call wokeness, the church of woke, I sometimes call it. It's almost like walking into a gold mine and just seeing the gold ore everywhere, and all these other people are just standing around it, just like not even touching it. It's like, look, all the material is there. It's right there. Just get your picks and just start hammering at it. I mean, it writes itself. I mean, oh God, the absurd times we live in. I mean, you don't even have to be creative. All you have to do is just log on Twitter and just scroll, and you'll just see people just saying just the craziest, most ridiculous stuff. And I mean, the first example that comes to mind, I almost don't know if I should say it, but I mean, it's the perfect example. It was a picture of a man that kind of looks like Bruce Vilanch. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but if not, just Google him later. But he looks just like Bruce Vilanch, basically. And he's wearing like a green one-piece woman's bathing suit. He is clearly not a woman. And whoever posted it wrote, you know, quick poll, who would have a problem with this person walking into the women's changing room? And there were numerous women who were like, well, I wouldn't have a problem with all. I mean, that's a woman right there. And I mean, meanwhile, I'm looking, this guy has a full beard, and you can just look below the waist and just say, okay, there's no way that's a woman unless she has like a bunch of tumors growing down there. What is wrong with all of you? Just what is wrong with you? I mean, if you told me back in 2010 that a guy who looks like that anywhere, almost anywhere in America, could just walk into a woman's changing room and the police would not immediately be called, I would have thought you were crazy. But oh, here we are in 2023, and yeah, that's just reality because reasons.
The police will be called, but they'll be there to arrest the person that complains.
Oh,
the mother that's complaining her child is being exposed, and I use the word exposed knowingly, to things she shouldn't be. No, it is a quite incredible world. But this is the beauty of your book, and this, so pleased to have you on. You are one of the people that tens of millions of people see things the way you do. But as I say, 90% of them just grit their teeth and carry on and pretend it will go away, and it obviously won't. It's obviously getting worse and worse. So what is it that special about you that made you, I presume you don't have a literary background, but maybe you did, and maybe this is just a new diversion.
Oh, what tipped you off?
But you're obviously taking a stand for very solid moral principles. So were you a writer before in any way, shape or form, or is this a complete detour for you?
Well, it's funny how this began. Right when, let's see, Amazon got into the self-publishing game, just a few months afterwards, actually, do you remember, I don't know how big this book was outside of the United States, but do you remember back in the 2000s, the book The Secret?
No.
Okay. This book was all the rage here, and Oprah promoted it. It was basically, you know, the power of positive thinking, how you can just change reality just by willing something into existence. And I mean,
yeah.
I just utter garbage, utter garbage. but it sold millions of copies here in the United States, mostly because Oprah Winfrey had it on her show.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, that's ridiculous foolishness. You know what I'm going to do? Just for the hell of it, I'm going to write just a little booklet on how to summon a genie. Because, I mean, what they propose in The Secret is the same as having a genie. So I'm not going to say what pen name I used, but I wrote a manual on how to summon a genie. And I thought, okay, only like 1 or 2 people are going to be dumb enough to buy this. Well, I was wrong. I was wrong. I guess genies, this was back in, I don't know, 2015. Genies must have been popular that year, at least in North America and Canada, because How to Summon a Genie sold thousands of copies.
Wow.
But I didn't make any money off of it because I was only charging like 99 cents for it. So, I mean, I got nothing out of it. But when I did get that first royalty check, it was back when Amazon was still sending out checks. I took it to the bank and I told my teller about what I had written to get the check. And she was like, oh my God. And I was like, I know, right? And so then I thought, wow, you know, if people are dumb enough to buy this, you know, I'm going to actually start writing. I got a lot of great ideas for stories. And I used to write when I was in school just for the hell of it. But, you know, I would just like give whatever I wrote to my friends. Hey, what do you think of this? Oh, this is great. Maybe you should be a writer one day. Maybe I will. So, yeah. So one day I just decided, yeah, I'm going to take advantage of Amazon. I'm going to start writing and publishing my own work and see if anyone buys it. And I'm pretty sure they will because they bought my stupid genie booklet. And I mean, thousands and thousands of people bought it. It blew my mind. It still blows my mind. People still buy it, but not the rate they were buying it back in like 2015, 2016. Like I said, genies must have been popular that year.
Right. That isn't Flesh of the Phantasm, because that's a book.
Oh, no. Flesh of the Phantasm. Let's see. That's just some work I did. I've always been interested in religion, and that's just some work I did regarding, let's see, mostly the Docetist heresy in early Christianity, and just things relating to that.
Okay.
Is
that fiction? Or not?
Well, the last story's fiction because the two, I guess we'll just call them research papers because they're both very short. There's not a lot of info on Docetism out there. I mean, most of it is.
I don't even know what it is. What is it?
Well, Docetism, that arose sometime in the 2nd or 3rd century, where it was before the New Testament had been compiled, of course. So a lot of churches were using gospels that suggested Jesus did not have a physical body. He was a phantom, essentially. Thus, the virgin birth never happened. None of that happened. You see a lot of that in certain strains of Buddhism, too, where they attribute Buddha as having like an astral body or something. People don't like to think about their religious figures, their saviors, sitting on the toilet and defecating. So that's basically kind of where that strain of thought.
Escaping.
Oh, yeah. So, well, I thought that was interesting, but like everything I find on Docetism was written by, you know, its detractors. And so I just didn't have a lot of material. So I wrote a vampire novel that was related to not so much Docetism, but Gnosticism in general. And I mean, a lot of it takes place in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which put me at a disadvantage because I had to read all about the Austro-Hungarian Empire and actually had to learn some geography, learn about Austria and various regions. And then I had to, of course, learn common Austrian names. And that's the great thing about writing. It forces you to educate yourself.
So when was this written? What?
Oh, Flesh of the Phantasm? Well, that was, let's see, Intro to Docetism, I think I wrote in 2020, I want to say. And let's see, the other two stories, they were written just this past year.
Right. Okay. So you're getting going. You're getting a lot of momentum all of a sudden, and let's hope there'll be a lot more to come. So we understand now where you came from writing-wise, the sort of physical activity of writing. But as I hinted earlier, there's a lot more to this. I mean, you coming from a very traditional conservative. We use the term conservative, but it's not really conservative. Your position is very familiar to me. Let's put it that way, and to many of the viewers. And you had the writing skills in your back of your head. So what was it that made you decide to sort of throw down the gauntlet at the left, which you've obviously done in no uncertain terms, and challenge them in using the page, paper, and pen to do so? Where was what prompted you to suddenly decide, right, here we go, I'm going to take them on?
When I realized that wokeness was not the same as political correctness back in the 90s, because that was really, at least here in America, that was just a social trend, and it just kind of died in the early 2000s. I didn't realize that wokeness, social justice, whichever you want to call it, it went from becoming a social trend, the offspring of political correctness, and it had evolved into a religion. I mean, it is an actual religion. People like, say, Tim Pool, they often refer to it as a cult. No. Cults have small followings. I mean, this is a religion, just a full-blown religion. So we're kind of fighting a religious war. That's how I look at it. And it's rather depressing. I've researched religion since I was about 16. And
I see, yes.
Religion, it takes a while for a religion to die. Cults come and go, but religions, it takes a long time for them to die out. So I'm afraid that wokeness, it will be here until the day we die. We're just going to have to deal with it for the rest of our lives. And might as well go ahead and, like I said, or rather, like you said, guns blazing. You just got to start fighting, just right off the bat. Right off the bat. Otherwise, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, think about where we would be if back in 2014 or 15, we were just like, okay, yeah, you know what? We're not going to even have a conversation about whether or not men can get pregnant because it's absurd and we're just not going to do it. I mean, things would be so much better. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about that particular issue because that really, the trans community, that's pretty much just a sword that they're using that they can wield against pretty much anyone. The woke, they have multiple weapons in their arsenal. When they get tired of wielding one, like, racism, they'll put that down. Okay, this sword, getting tired of it. Pick up this other sword. Transphobia. Hack, hack, hack. There we go.
Yeah.
So you got to try to disarm them. You got to disarm your opponent. And fortunately, right now, I think they're getting tired of using the trans sword. They're realizing it's not really working as well as it used to now that the lesbian, gay, and bisexual community, they're all kind of coming out against that particular community. We're seeing a civil war right now within that community. So I don't think they'll be able to use that weapon too much longer. So I guess they'll probably go back to the whole racism. I mean, that's always nice and reliable, especially since the American press, they pretty much consider 1/3 of the human race to be either white supremacist or white supremacist sympathizers. I mean, I think you saw about that, I believe he was Southeast Asian or Indian immigrant that rammed a truck into the White House gates, and they had a picture of the swastika flag, and the swastika flag, it like looked brand new. It still had like all the little folds, like it just got out of the printer. And it's like, oh, looky here, another brown white supremacist. And I'm just like, okay, who buys this? Who buys this? who really thinks that there's all these non-white white supremacists running around causing chaos? It's absurd.
Yeah, well, like you said,
And
they've got lots of weapons. Go on.
oh yeah, did you hear about the Allen Outlet Mall shooting fairly recently in Texas, where you had a Latino gunman shoot like a bunch of people at the Allen Outlet Mall? I lived right down the street from that mall when I was in Texas. I was only about a mile and a half away. And so I was like, oh no, what's going on? And I look and, well, saw a picture of the guy's body on Twitter and saw some cartel tattoos. But then 24 hours later, the media unearthed a photo, a headless photo, where you see a guy who's kind of tan and has a big swastika right here. And they're like, see, this is the guy who shot up the Allen Outlet Mall. And it's like, we can't even see the guy's head. His head's been cut off in the photo. That could be anyone. That could be the head. That could be that one guy from the Greek Golden Dawn party that's got a swastika tattooed on him. I mean, we don't know where that's from. I mean, there's a lot of gaslighting around the evil specter of white supremacy, and
then a few days later it all disappears, so that you get its memory hold, and we never get to corroborate whether that was the real guy or photoshopped or whatever. It's all gone.
And no one asks any questions. No one ever says, kind of weird that all these Southeast Asians and Mexicans are reading Mein Kampf. Well, we already know there's black white supremacists. I mean, Clarence Thomas.
Of course, yes.
I don't know. I hate that term. I hate the term white supremacy just because my generation, and I'm sure yours, when you hear white supremacist, you think, neo-Nazi skinhead or something like that. But no, when the woke say white supremacist, they mean anyone who likes Western Civ.
Yeah, and beyond. So I'm getting a bigger picture now. It was your writing ability coupled with your ability to see what religions are, and you recognized in wokeness something distinct from political correctness. I think that's a very interesting issue to notice. And then that kind of fused and prompted you together with your inevitable, you must have an inevitable courage to put pen to paper. And you mentioned that we need to start throwing this back in their face and sort of getting angry and quicker and taking the necessary steps. Now, you're obviously not going to be able to do that in real life, but your characters, oh yes, do they take revenge. This is the first three stories, which we'll address one by one, I think, are all scenarios which are very familiar to us. But instead of this placid, flaccid, white sort of guilt and that's taught to so many, and so that they bow down and let everything happen and pass, your guys decide to take up the challenge. There are three scenarios you paint in each story, one in each story. The triggering is the Portland fiasco, which is to do with this when they took over the downtown. Is that correct?
I wrote that story back in 2018, I want to say. And the weird thing is, the Portland fiasco kind of actually happened in 2020. So it was kind of a prophetic work. I mean, at least the part where Portland just becomes one giant riot, that definitely happened in 2020. So I was like, I was just waiting for my story to actually come into fruition, and a bunch of people in a armored car with offensive slogans just driving through it in 2020. I was actually like, please God, let that happen. Please God, let that happen. That would be hilarious.
It's quite interesting because the guys don't do anything illegal. The plot goes as
no,
follows.
They don't.
Portland's been taken over, as described, as in real life, and the one guy, together with a few mates, decides that without breaking the law, they're going to challenge the authority of these, or at least have some fun at the expense of the people occupying the centre of the town. So they get an armoured car, they paint it with lots of triggering words and phrases that were bound to drive any self-respecting lefty completely nuts. And then they drive it through the streets knowing they're going to be attacked and knowing that it might not end well for them, but they're not bothered about the consequences. Here's a little extract, because they're being mobbed now. The vehicle they're in is being mobbed. They've been caught and surrounded. And just a little paragraph to give you a feel for the writing and also the directness of your way you write. So they're escaping the mob, and the SJWs went flying in all directions. They're screaming, "Now we're getting bashed by the fash," as they screamed in terror, even though they were blocking the streets. So really, it was their own damn fault. They were getting pulverized by a big-ass armored car. Our glorious mobile fortress of free speech and liberal ass-kicking. The crowd began to thin out. So this is towards the end of the story. You think there were "Dump Trump" and "Hate speech is not free speech" protest signs everywhere. Before we knew it, we were only a few miles from the city limits. It looked like we were in the clear. Then out of the blue, they just appeared. An army of body-positive feminists. It's like a video game where you beat all the hardcore defenders of the city, and then just when you think
that's actually what I was thinking of the whole time. I was just thinking of like an old school Nintendo game.
Yeah, and then you reach the ultimate boss, which in this case is body-positive feminists who take their own revenge. You weren't a part of the Portland thing at all in any way. This is just something you viewed from a distance.
Okay, wait, what was that? You kind of cut out on my end real quick.
Not at all. You were not involved in the Portland thing at all. This is something you.
Oh, no. I would never set foot on the West Coast of the United States anytime soon, at least.
No, indeed. Well, the next stories, it was an incident with a girl from Fox News, wasn't it, that triggered the massacre at the Red Chicken story. Yes. Let's see,
Huckabee. I believe it was Sarah Sanders Huckabee.
Right.
I'm not 100% certain, but when that happened, I was just like, okay, okay, how can I make this into a great story? Because, I'm just not big on harassing the underlings of the president when they're having dinner with their families. I mean, even if I don't like the guy, like I'm obviously not a fan of Biden, but if I happen to see well, I was about to say, if I see any one of his family members eating at a restaurant that I happen to be at, and I'm like thinking, okay, we all know what Hunter's going to be doing at that restaurant. He's going to be going right to the bathroom. He's going to come out and he's going to have a bit of a white powdery substance under his nose. But okay. So yeah, having grown up in Virginia, I was kind of familiar with that general area, and honestly, it kind of shocks me at how crazy Virginia went. When I grew up there, it was, a light red state. I wouldn't call it a purple state, but during my childhood, it was like light red. And then sometime in the 90s, it just went light blue, and then just full blue.
It got swallowed. By
because it's in such close proximity to DC and Northern Virginia. That's where all the politicians live.
Yeah.
So in Fairfax and Alexandria and places like that, very expensive up there. But anyway, so I just thought to myself, okay, how can I take this incident at the Red Hen and make it hilariously violent, like the 80s classic, the greatest film, the greatest action movie of the 80s, Death Wish 3. I was thinking of Death Wish 3 the entire time while I was writing it. I mean, I absolutely love that movie because it's just so over the top. It is the most over the top 80s action film ever, and I love it despite its flaws. You got to. I mean, infinite ammo.
Got to.
That's great.
Yeah.
Charles Bronson, love him.
I agree. I could almost see Bruce Willis starring in the film of your version of the Red.
Bruce
In his
Willis when he
vest.
was good.
Yeah, going through the kitchens and stuff. I will leave the details of the plot. It's very simple, but out of it. But here's a description of some of the writing. It was like any other day when I took my grandfather into the Red Chicken. The waitress was wearing a pink pussy hat and an Antifa t-shirt. She walked up to the table. "What can I get you, capitalist xenophobes, today?" she said with a smug smile on her lily white face. And so it goes on. And again, it's a revenge. It's a Death Wish 3 on steroids.
Yeah.
It's a revenge fantasy. And to put it mildly, the staff of the Red Chicken will regret their actions that day.
Yes.
And you have a lot of fun at their expense, just talking about how there should be open borders and that they would not have a problem with their children being trans whatever and dating a member of MS-13, as long as they weren't Republicans. Anyway.
That was the funnest little story to write. It really was. And I mean, if there's, say, any aspiring writers watching this right now, the best advice I can give is if you're not having fun while writing, then you're not doing it right.
I think that's an absolutely very important point. It comes across in your writing, and I wish more people would get to grips with this. There's a lot of fun to be had. I think a lot of people are put off writing because they just see it as some kind of ordeal. I mean, don't get me wrong, it can be an ordeal. There are times when the placing of a comma can keep you awake at night for weeks on end. But at the same time, it is very rewarding. And if you do crack the sort of arrangements of where the commas should go and so on, it is a very fun, exciting and rewarding pastime. And not only that, you're going to be able to share it with others, like-minded people. That's very much the case with your writing. So we dealt there with the Red Chicken, and then the third one is about the Jakpo bombing, which
the Jakpo bombing. Yes, that was fun to write too. Although I was just like, okay. I'm burned out with comedy. I want to do something gritty and disturbing. And I basically modeled the media outlet Jakpo, Jackington Post, after Huffington Post, which is one of the worst liberal rags in the United States. And let's see, I loosely based the main character on let's see, it was Andrew Torba from Gab. Like, if Andrew Torba, if he didn't go on to form Gab after his run in Silicon Valley, or if he did, but okay, really it was like when they tried to destroy Gab, when they basically got Gab kicked off its server, got it debanked, did everything they could to destroy Gab, yet they persevered. The story is basically, what if they weren't able to persevere?
Yeah. And the guy was destroyed.
Yeah. What if it just totally destroyed Torba and he was like wound up working for like Domino's Pizza or something? What would someone like that do? And I mean, really, you can't blame the main character. I mean, his life was destroyed by these people. Now, don't get me wrong. I just want to say that bombing things is wrong. Violence and murder and crime is wrong.
Correct.
But
I agree.
Once again, sometimes
well, he's a broken man.
Horrible people can be sympathetic at times. That's basically the sum of it all. Sometimes a person who does horrible things is sort of justified, but we don't want to admit it. It's like that guy who built that armored bulldozer and destroyed the town that screwed him over. You know,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it's like, we were all kind of rooting for that guy. I mean, I remember when that happened. I remember watching TV
Yeah.
when that happened all those years ago. And I didn't know the story behind it, but I was like, okay, whoever that is, someone screwed him. Someone screwed
Yeah.
him, and he's getting his revenge. I forget that guy's name. I should
It
remember
was the
his name.
Killdozer, but yeah, I've forgotten his name too. Oh, well, you can blame the guy's a broken man, so you can blame it on his mental health. I mean, he's lost everything, and as Gerald Celente, the podcaster says, when people lose everything, they lose it. You know, you've got nothing left to worry about. So, I get another snapshot of these are stories all taken from real life, the context, and then you've just adapted them. Something I wish a lot more people would do. It's such a great, entertaining way to reorient ourselves rather than just be trodden on by this mass movement that we face at the moment. There was a fourth story, which is John and Jodie, I believe, which is
yes,
so much.
John Loves Jodie. That's something I put in there kind of just to pad everything out. I mean,
Right.
that was the first novella I wrote. I obviously have a very dark sense of humor, and I always found the story behind the attempted assassination of President Reagan by John Hinckley Jr. Part of me always found it a little funny how a guy could be so nuts that he's like, gee golly, if only actress Jodie Foster would notice me, she would surely fall in love with me. What can I do to earn this woman's love? Oh, I know. I'll take a shot at President Reagan, and she'll definitely fall for me then. And even though I'll probably be locked up forever, she'll wait for me, damn it. That's how much she loves me. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's funny. No offense to the Reagan family. No offense to the James Brady family. I'm actually a horrible person for finding that funny, but I'm sorry. It is funny because, well, lunacy is funny. Lunacy is funny. And that goes back to the whole, hey, look at all this woke shit. You know, you could write about it and how funny it is, you know? I mean, why don't you go ahead and do it? I don't know. What's the old saying go? We laugh to keep from crying.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine if John Hinckley was around in his younger form today, he'd be leading the bloody woke pack as well in one shape or another.
Yeah, I think I real quick, I think I took originally John Loves Jodie. It was on Kindle. It was standalone, but I'm pretty sure I unpublished it like the minute John Hinckley Jr. got out on parole, because I was like, okay, I didn't think he'd ever get out. I don't want him reading this and then looking me up and putting a bullet in me. So unpublished, but I'll still leave it in my compilation book for a while.
Yeah,
I don't know. I might end up. What I'll probably do in the near future is I already have a couple of stories that are just more fitting with the rest of the book, Tales from the Deplatform, and I'll probably remove John Loves Jodie and just plug in those stories.
More
I wasn't really.
with the theme. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, John Loves Jodie. It just didn't go with the theme, and I mean, really, I was just using it for padding because I was like, shoot, for all I know, I'm never gonna write anything again, you know, and I just got to publish some physical copy of a book. Tired of doing short stories. I don't know. I wonder if H.P. Lovecraft ever had that thought, because every single H.P. Lovecraft book I ever got, it was just a collection of his short stories, and I'm pretty sure that's all he did. I mean, I can't say 100% for sure, but I had 4 of his books. They were all short stories, and you know, I remember reading an interview with H.P. Lovecraft that was republished. And it was like from right before he died, and he talked about how he saw Bram Stoker's Dracula, Bela Lugosi's, you know, performance, and he said that he thought the movie was horrible, and that he hoped that none of his stories would ever be made into a terrible movie like the original Dracula and Bela Lugosi. And I'm just like, oh my God, Lovecraft is spinning in his grave. I mean, okay, maybe Lovecraft, I think he probably got sent to hell and his punishment is just watching the movies that his stories were eventually adapted into.
Generated.
Yeah, it's like,
Oh, dear.
no, there's no Lake of Fire for you. No, today you're going to watch the adaptation of your story, The Unnameable, that stars Penthouse model Julie Strain. Oh, goody.
On a loop.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dear. Okay, now you call the title of the book ends with the words Volume 1, which obviously conservative fiction Volume 1. That obviously suggests, and you've just mentioned it, that there may be more in the works. Can you give us an idea of what you're planning for the future?
Well, let's see. Right now, I just have 2 short stories that are just kind of floating around in limbo. I'll publish them whenever. Let's see. One is related to a guard in the federal prison that houses many right-wing crazies, we'll call them, and he's very sympathetic to them.
Are they all characters from your former stories? They've been the ones that
one
survived.
actually is. I won't say which one. One actually is, because I was like, I got to use a character from a former story just to kind of give a nod to any fans that I might have. Let's see. The other one, well, the other one's just not finished, and so I'm not even going to really mention it. I've actually gotten sidetracked because someone was posting, let's see, it was a bunch of stories, a bunch of links to stories about killer dinosaurs. Like there's some sort of dinosaur exploitation genre, and I was unfamiliar with this. I'm just not into dinosaurs, but it was Splattersaurus.
Grab it.
And so I thought Splattersaurus, I was like, that sounds hilarious. And I'm like, maybe I want to write a dinosaur thriller. And so I just started working on one. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do something related to Carnosaur or Splattersaurus that is going to involve a very woke city similar to Portland having to deal with a rampaging dinosaur.
I can't wait.
And right now, I just got to the part where the library is having another drag queen story hour, and the Splattersaurus interrupts that story hour. And let's see.
Shut up and take my money.
Yeah, people are gonna love it. And yeah. That's the whole idea. I just want people to be entertained. That's why I do what I do. I want to make people laugh. I want to make people think, but mostly make people laugh. And I mean, I could just care less at what, say, some critics would have to say about my work. I mean, honestly, I was terrified of this interview. I was absolutely terrified because I was watching all of your old videos with all the various authors, and I was just like thinking, okay, let's be honest. My work is beneath this man. It is beneath this show. It's just very low grade. It's basically, for lack of a better term, it's basically like
it's like a B movie, but sometimes
I don't want to call it porn, but I mean that's the close comparison compared to some of the people that you yourself have interviewed. Yes, I consider my work to be let's see, very disposable, but I don't know, maybe that's a good thing. I was always a big fan I was always a big fan of Queen, and Freddie Mercury described Queen's music as disposable pop. So I don't know. Maybe I'm in good company.
I think you've hit a few nails on the head there, but I don't think they're negative. It isn't as high-minded as some of the books, definitely, but it does pack an enormous punch, especially given its quite short manuscript. And it also is highlighted very much, which we haven't really seen, despite me doing now, I don't know how many interviews over 3 or 4 years, we haven't seen many people just taking the obvious shots at the obvious targets like you have in a simple, straightforward way. To me, it's a bit like the B movies of the 50s, which were often, with James Cagney being a gangster or something, they used to make them in 15 days in a back lot at some studio in LA.
Oh, yeah, they just cranked them out back then.
Yeah, but some of them are classics, and or the Pulp Fiction of the Black Mask and Chandler and stuff. They were done in a matter of days, these stories, and some of them still live with us. It shows you that not all literature has to be high-minded and well-researched and this and that. You can pack a punch, get your message out, have a lot of fun, and entertain people at the same time on a really, let's say, on a reduced budget, in the sense that you're not obviously spending tons of time editing and sending it to publishers.
I wish I had the time. I really do. No, I hate editing. I think everyone hates editing. I mean, how many times have you yourself, you were like, okay, I'm done editing. And then you save. And then you're like, okay, you know what? I can improve this chapter. And then you do some last minute editing, and then you save, but you still have like the original unedited edition just in case you changed your mind. And so like what I'll do is I'll be like Portland Fiasco final edit, and then underneath it'll say Portland Fiasco final edit. And the third one, Portland Fiasco, this is really the final edit. ...
Now, before we go, it would be remiss of me if I didn't ask you what in life turned you into this right-wing lunatic fiend that has to see revenge taken on the wonderful left. What were you beaten remorselessly as a child or something? Or what was it? You're red pilling. How did it come about?
Let's see. I would have to say it was sometime in 2013 when I was listening to, I forget which host. It was on the Sirius Satellite XM left-wing channel. And up until then, I'd been, just fairly moderate. And I was just listening to this guy just berate both the white working class and white upper class. And I couldn't help but think, sounds like this guy's having an internal conflict. He's trying to decide who he hates more, the ignorant white working class or the evil, all-powerful white upper class. And then all of a sudden I was just like, wait a minute. I'm white working class. Wait, this guy hates me. What did I do? And it's like, oh, well, you did a lot of, well, it's not anything you did, Joe. It's what your evil ancestors did. And I'm like, everyone has evil ancestors. Why? I mean, I just passed, like, right when this was happening, I passed a guy who looked like he was probably Moroccan or Algerian. And he was like just selling jewelry on the street. And I was like, okay, that guy's like North African. Should he be on his knees apologizing for the Moorish invasion of Europe? Well, evidently, no. They all get a pass.
Just you.
It's just you, buddy. And drive a little further, and what do you see? Oh, wow, there's the new Japanese restaurant. Well, wait, Japan, they did horrible things back in the day. I mean, and a lot of it wasn't even that long ago. Should they be ashamed? No, it's just you. Just you. And one thing I always hated was hypocrisy.
In both cases, incidentally, it was us, in our ancestors, that put an end to the Moorish piracy and to the Japanese invasion of mainland Asia and the atrocities committed. It was us that stopped it. We don't get any credit for that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I feel bad for you British, because the left really hates you guys probably more than anything else on earth. And when you look at all the good things that Great Britain has done, like, for example, Ending slavery, pretty much. Pretty
Yeah,
much
yeah,
abolishing slavery.
absolutely, yeah.
And,
Do you know we finished paying? Do you know that we finished? The slave owners were given reparations at the time, and the British people didn't finish paying the debt that was owed, that accumulated from that until about 10 years ago. So
oh, wow.
I mean, that's how seriously we take it and how much we were involved. Even we were involved personally because we were paying it off even as little as 10 years ago. But yeah, we don't get any credit for any of that, obviously.
British colonialism was the best thing that ever happened to so many countries. I mean, I think now your average person who lives in Zimbabwe wishes that it was Rhodesia. I think that
absolutely, yeah.
I think that if let's say if you take a look at, say, India, just any artist representation of what India looked like prior to the British arrival, and compare it to what India looks like now, well, shoot, I think the British improved it a bit, don't you?
Yeah, I was born in Jamaica, just as the British were leaving Jamaica as part of the winding down of the empire. And in the 10 years, my first 10 years on Earth, Jamaica went from paradise, literal paradise, where everyone wanted to live and be and holiday, to a hellhole, and it still remains pretty much a hellhole to this day.
I don't think Jamaica had near the drug trafficking problem when the British ran it.
No, not at all. That's subject of another day, another chat. I found you on Twitter. I'm going to leave a link to your Twitter account. Hopefully we'll get a few more people on it. And I will leave a link also to the book on Amazon, where it can be bought. I highly recommend it. It's great fun. It's as Joe has already said, it's not the high-flying literary masterpiece that some writers might aspire to, although it's a masterpiece in its own right, and it's definitely as much fun as you'll get for your buck in anywhere on Amazon, I should think, especially if you're red-pilled. I think we'll leave it there then, Mr. Joe Kelly. I do appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate you asking me. It was a high honor, and well, thanks for having me.
Sorry you were so scared.
Oh, yes. I'm actually, honestly, during the whole process, let's see, you can't see me below here, but I was just like shaking the whole time.
Jelly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, great pleasure. All the best.